So I'll do a recap. So the back part of the brain is starved for input. And if we don't give it input, if there isn't input coming into the physical brain, both from your body and from the environment, and why would there not be information coming in if there's limited flow? Or if there's blocked flow, or if there's mixed flow, information from the senses or the sensory system that is directly feeding the dominant side of the brain travels faster. The ones from the blocked or limited flow sensory system takes longer. So even though you are perceiving, it's not overlapping in the brain to give you one experience. So it's very easy to become overwhelmed. So mixed, I don't know which is worst, blocked or mixed sensory input. Free flow is easy. Blocked, well, you've got nothing, um, which is not pleasant because you have to the brain will generate. It will generate information because it has to have information and it's going to draw from the past and past memories. And remember the whole conversation we had at the conference about the stories we tell ourselves, the way we interpret things that has happened. So that becomes your database. Let me just take a sip.
Melody, is that why people overthink?
I think so. I think so. I think it has also has something to do with the brain profile. Because the more blue in the profile, the greater I find the greater the tendency to overthink. Excuse. But the important thing is, once information is in the brain, the part of the brain, it has to think of a seesaw. If there's information in, there's an immediate effect, and it asks for a corresponding action, which is the opposite of sensory motor input is sensory input is motor output. So the moment there's new information, the brain says you need to do something with that. And it can be subtle. It can be subtle, like a change in breathing rate, a change in heartbeat, but there will be a corresponding action on a motor level. And the moment that is appropriate, there's an immediate emotional effect. So, we've had this conversation. I really argued the point whether um, emotions can start on its own, whether it generates its own input and it can't. Emotions are always reactions. They always reactions. They react to the sensory input by making you feel. Remember, emotions are only messengers. It actually says using your past database and comparing that to the new information. In that comparison, I'm going to predict, because the brain is a prediction making machine, that this is a hostile environment. Disengage, remove yourself. Or, if you feel strong enough, attack. Okay, but there's some kind of a response. And if you're receptive and your output is blocked, what happens then? Then you disappear inwards. So you're there, but you're gone. Are you with me? So I really, really am deeply under the impression of the importance of there has to be an immediate effect in the same dimension on the opposite in the opposite place. So if it's sensory input and there is input, there'll have to be a motor output. If there wasn't sensory input, it gets generated on the inside till there is sensory input because that's step one in our human process. Is as was it Bruce Lipton who said we are sensitive to environment, and then he corrected himself and he said we are exquisitely sensitive to our environment, and it's so beautifully put because we are exquisitely sensitive. Some people more than others. And that's where the reflexes come in. You see, the reflexes enables the nervous system to develop the pairs, the back and the front. So how does that happen? Well, what does the withdrawal do? The sensory back brain through motor front brain. What does the morrow do? Vestibular, so the withdrawal was tactile and motor. Vestibular, morrow, vestibular level one, and motor. Rooting and sucking, smell and taste, and motor. TLR, hearing and motor. What's next? Palmar and plantar, it's an advanced tactile. So it's again, it's sensory input, touch, and motor. And then ATNR, what happens there? Eyes and motor. Can you see how the reflex system works and contributes to the profile? And that's why we always say, unfortunately, reflex is first, because if they haven't completed their job, their developmental job to build a pathway from, if it's occipital ATNI, it will be from the back part of the brain to the front part. If it's the TLR, for example, it will be temporal and the front part of the brain. If it hasn't completed its job, that that connection between the back brain and the front brain is not in place. Are you with me? Does it make sense? And that's why we say if there are aberrant reflexes, it the profile is a profile, but it can undermine a profile. And that's, for years I did profiles without reflex profile assessment. The reflexes came way after the MDP. And it was when I gave feedback to people, children, it was nearly always children, about their profiles. They would say, but I can't relate to it. And then I'll double check. And obviously, we always double check with the client. You observe, but you wait for the client to give you information because how they experience the response is validation for what you observed, both visually, but definitely through proprioception and touch. And so we agreed the profile is correct, but they couldn't relate to it. And then I realized, but there's something undermine the potential of this child in terms of their profile. And that's why we always say you have to develop first the nervous system, and that's through the reflex system. And then the nervous system starts specializing where there's a pair. You either become back brain dominant or you become front brain dominant. But the more integrated the back and the front parts of the brain, and it's always in the sequence, it's always sensory first, and it has a motor output without thought. But the greater the speed and the communication between the back and the front brain, the greater the chance that a child will respond, or the client will respond emotionally in an appropriate way. Even if even if the input is perceived as toxic or negative or threatening, the more integrated the back and front brain, the quicker the child or the person can respond to that. Okay? So now they respond, and there's always an emotional spin-off, always. Whether that is to engage because it's experiences something positive, or if the response is to disengage because it's experienced as threatening or resembles a past experience that was similar that turned out as threatening, there's an emotional response. And then the bottom part of the brain, if you stay in the bottom brain, and unfortunately, I was not expecting to be here tonight, so I don't have my red double-decker bus. But just imagine for a moment, if you sit bottom right back in the double-decker bus, or you get up and you go to the next layer, the next level up, and you go to the left front, would you see the world, perceive the world in the same way from top left front as bottom right back? It's a different world. And every time, well, I can tell you at the moment, there's huge challenges on the farm where I'm living. Hey, kyk daar, mooi. Thank you, Mariki. Turn slowly, turn slowly.
Oh,
You in at the advanced class now, man. Daar sê. Oh, that is so beautiful. Who made that for you?
it was a gift from my children for a Christmas because they know who I am and what I live for.
That is so
So it
beautiful.
opens up at the top. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. Oh, that is so awesome. But you can see what I mean. It's just such a visual way. If you think
Mm.
of what you see when you sit right in the front versus what you see when you sit right at the back and at the bottom. So on the farm where the institute is, there's tremendous conflict at the moment with management. And for some reason, I find myself as part of the management. And I have never, ever, ever lived in a community where everything is negotiated. You have to ask permission for everything. I forget to ask permission because between my back brain and my decision making in the front brain, there's definitely not a 2 second gap or lapse. Um, and it's really, really, really difficult. And every time it becomes close to unbearable, I think, okay, figure out where this person is sitting in the bus. Figure out, because if you don't figure out where they are in the bus, you can't go and join them on that seat. Sit back, be quiet, and instead of being irritated, instead of wanting to push them into a direction, can't push them. You have to go and fetch them on their seat. So you have to figure out, where are they sitting? Well, number one, where are you sitting? Because how can you go to where they are sitting if you don't know where you are sitting? And when you figure out where you are sitting, it's always so humbling to realize how limited your view is from wherever you are. You understand? And because immediately it takes that who's right and who's wrong, it takes it out of the equation. Because it's not right and wrong. It's different perspectives based on past databases that we've gained over time, the stories we tell each other, or we tell ourselves and each other, and then the way you make sense of information immediately. And I actually do not have a very quick profile, but I've had a lot of practice in decision making. So I do have a myelinated, it's too well myelinated, it's too fast. Um, so the main thing so far is when information comes in, yes, it comes in through the senses, but it comes in through the senses because it's prompted by the backside of the brain that says, give me information. And the ease with which the backside of the brain, the back brain, receives the information determines the speed of the processing. Remember, emotions are always a reaction, a response to that sensory input. Okay, so the moment there's an emotional response, there's a slight gap between stimulus and response. And can you remember it's a Stephen Covey quote? No, it's not. He quoted Viktor Frankl saying that between stimulus and response, there's a gap. And in that gap lies my freedom to choose my response. It is one of the most profound things I've ever heard in my life. So I'm going to say it slow to those of you who want to write it down. So it's a Viktor Frankl. Remember Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning?
Mm.
So he was an Israeli psychiatrist in the Holocaust. And he said, between stimulus, what happens, and your response, there's a gap. I want to say, Vic, there should be a gap. Because if there's not a gap, it's stimulus response. If there is a gap, there's stimulus, and in that gap, before the response, there is this gap where you can choose your response emotionally towards or what away from. But there's an intense emotional response. And if you can't mediate it with thinking, and that typically means words, if you can't say near man, that scratchy sound you just heard, it's not somebody trying to break in. It's the branches of the tree. It's winter. They bare. It's just scratching on the roof. It's the tree. Oh, okay, that's fine. You know? So the moment you can mediate whatever you're feeling, positive or negative, and you can not rationalize it, but use your rational brain, which part, left or right, we'll get there. But if you can't go one level up, there's not a big enough gap to choose your response. Does that make sense? So if there's not a big enough gap to choose your response, you're stimulus bound. So you're reactive. You can't choose your response. You are a victim of all past behaviors. Charlize, maak hierdie sin. Okay? Why do I say you're a victim of your past behaviors? Well, you can't generate new behaviors. And behave, you must behave because the brain says you have to act. Because if you're a sitting duck, you're soon going to be dead. So that incredible need to survive, to live. And I'm going to deviate ever so slightly. Whenever I go back to the city, and especially London, I am I am amazed at how many homeless people are in London. There's lots of soup kitchens, and that contributes to the number of homeless people living in London on the streets. And I look at them, and there was a guy in COVID time. I saw him moving in the area. And I have seen that man deteriorate in the last 5 years like you cannot believe. And it's not one, there's a few, but this one guy was a young guy. And you see when he has such limited behavioral options by now. You understand? Because his world is small and he's not thinking. He is just running on the same pattern every day. He goes from this dustbin to that. He really has a route. It's like a bus with a route. They have a route and they work the route. So there can't be, if there's not a gap between stimulus and response, you stay in the lower levels. The moment there's emotional response, it's one up. An emotional response is one up because the think of the house, sensory input, sensory output is foundation.
Mm.
Bottom part is the walls. It's one up. There's a great gap. Yep, Marike?
Melody, may we say the following, that the smaller the gap, it it goes to unconscious reaction.
Yeah, yeah.
The bigger the gap, it's conscious because it's a different ball
Response.
game.
Then
Yeah,
it's not a
a response.
reaction, then it's a response.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes, sir.
that's very true.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. And
okay.
with that unconscious reaction comes unconsciously income. I don't know. I don't know why I just did
Mm,
that. I didn't want to behave
mm,
like that, but I just did again.
mm,
You know that? We
mm,
don't do that, but we see
mm.
it in other people. Ha 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 ha. So the greater the gap, so the distance between stimulus and response, The greater that gap, the greater the chance that you will choose your reaction. I'm sorry. There's a reaction on a base level, on the foundation level. There's a response on a cognitive level. So you react, it's like reflexively reacting, but you respond. Respond means I have observed, I have felt, I have given meaning to this, and I am choosing to delay the motor output. And if by now, whatever you've thought to act on is not important enough, the moment passed. You know, it sometimes happens in the conversation. Somebody is talking, you think, oh, I've got this to, you know, this would be a nice example or something like that. And then they continue to talk. And after a while, so the information is up here in your thinking brain. Whether it's left or right, we'll get to left and right just now. But when that moment has passed, and it's no longer going to be appropriate or fitting to say what you wanted to say, it dissolves. It doesn't go into output. So there must be a strong enough emotional response because remember, information goes up through the emotions and it comes down through the emotions. And that's why one's emotions are so, and healthy emotions are so important because information passes through your emotional filters twice on the way in and on the way out. And if there's not enough emotional fuel, so you're not feeling strongly enough about whatever it is that you are thinking and that you've chosen, then it dissolves. It doesn't go over into action. This is not new. You knew that. I'm just filling time till we say goodbye. You really know all of this. Okay? But now when that information gets to the top part of the brain, it has a house. It has a room with a comfy chair and just the right lighting and a lacquer carpet and the right things against the wall. It's home. And it depends on where's home. Is home, give me the facts, give me the details. I have to have all the information before I go move forward. Or, wow, right brain hits, it's like a pinball machine. It hits a nerve and it goes boom, 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 and it amplifies, and then we need to move. We need to act on it. Okay, so home can be on the left or on the right. But it's when we are limited to the dominant side of the brain because it's a pair. We either back or front brain dominant because it's a pair and we specialize in one of the two. Oh, but shouldn't we all specialize in the back? No. Then we'll all be observers and ponderers and pontificationers. If you ever read the Tao of Pooh or Winnie the Pooh, Owl pontificates. He's constantly thinking, thinking, thinking. It's all back brain action. It's good, but you have to get across to the front as well. What's the other pair? The other pair is an emotional response. You have no choice about that. Whether you want to respond emotionally or not. Some people are superb at covering the emotional response. Some, it's like a poker face, where others can't do that at all. Whatever is happening, you can see it. You can see it. They have no they ha they don't wear masks. It's very easy to read them. Okay? So that means a strong emotional response. And that's good. That's good because it means you're involved. And this is really important because if you don't feel like in this moment, Maritjie, wat op aarde doen jy?
Ek is geïrriteerd met hierdie lappie wat nie reguit lê nie. Hy wil nie vanaand stil wees nie.
Now that is a perfect example of what we're talking about. because in her environment, she's picking up something that's not straight, and that darn thing is talking to her, and it will not let go unless there's whatever sense, whatever needs to happen, movement, front brain, to make this discomfort and irritation go away. It dissolves it. Dankie, Maritjie. Ons het dit afgespreek dat jy dit so doen. So, so the balance is between back and front.
Absolutely.
The balance is between bottom and top, and the bottom brain, you have no choice about that happens automatically. Some people, due to life sometimes, decide to switch off the heart. Too much pain. Too much pain. Switches off the heart. Says it's not good for you to feel so deeply. Let's numb the heart. Less pain. But that also means less connection. Because the heart is our way of connecting. So if the heart reads a situation as painful and so painful over time that it gears down, it says, not safe in this environment to feel, don't feel. You also lose the connection, unfortunately. But say it is a positive environment, so and there's a positive response, but it's a very intense response. Now, unless the thinking brain engages, you're going to run with that emotion, and untethered emotion normally takes you all the way straight into a wall. So either very positive or very negative. Too much emotion or uncontrolled emotion um, takes you towards a collision with a wall. It's ne it it's disruptive, it's undisciplined, it instills fear in other people because you become unpredictable. Does that make sense? And unless that marvelous endowment that we as humans got, called the cortex, unless that thing pops in, Maritjie, sit nou stil.
Ek
Jy
kry nie
maak
die
my
foon
seesie.
reg immediately.
Okay, nou beweeg jy nie weer nie. Hoor jy vir my? Anders gaan ek vir jou raps oor jou vingertjies.
Die
Okay.
foon slip.
So on my
Sorry.
screen, you full screen. So every time you move, I want to see if you're okay. No, 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 no. It's a nice picture. So if that thinking brain says, okay, whoa, 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 whoa. So the thinking brain is a marvelous brake. The emotions are actually like the accelerator. It says, oh. The thinking brain says, whoa, 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 whoa. Now, which part of the thinking brain is better at braking, left or right? Both brake. They say, stop a little bit with this feeling business. But which is the more effective brake? Okay, let me give you a picture. If you're behind a car and they brake and you see red lights all the time, how are they braking? The foot's on the brake all the time. Hey, if you sit behind somebody and you see the brake lights come on, off, on, off, on, off, I believe that's the right way to brake. That means they are putting the brakes on and they're letting go. They're putting otherwise you can skid. Jy kan gly. Okay, so but this is a terrible example because now it sounds like this is a better way of being. But the left brain, the left top part of the brain, the left top back brain is unbelievably effective with applying brakes. It's that I don't know why, but tonight I'm thinking in cartoons. So I see that and all the smoke and all the things coming out. So which part of the brain? It must be top because bottom is the accelerator. So it's definitely top. Um, top front or top back? Brakes back because it curbs motor output. And then so it was back, it was top, back, and then left. The left says, give me the detail. The top right back just uses that moment to come up with all kinds of scenarios, and actually they very often blow it completely out of proportion. Because you remember they color in. The left brain is like black and white, grayscale. The right brain is full palette color. And it amplifies and it adds sounds. I love the right brain, but it goes cuckoo sometimes because it elaborates on stuff that really doesn't need elaboration. It's elaborate enough as it is. So wat gebeur? The left back top part of the brain, tremendous breaks to such an extent that you sometimes don't get them to move forward. And we can say they procrastinate, they pontificate, we can say a lot of stuff. They're extremely good researchers, but they're not very good at taking immediate action unless they're well developed, because then the situation determines whether they apply the brake and can let it go or just apply the brake. So the moment that top back left brain lets go of the brake and it moves forward to the front part of the brain, man, that's when magic happens. Because then everything that is done, it's thought through, it is careful, it is controlled. It can be too controlled, but it can, you understand, there's a too much. At the back, there's a too much. There's everywhere, there's a too much. There's a too much sensory input, overly sensitive, especially if the withdrawal reflex is active. They pick up too much information. And can you remember we've had a previous discussion either at the conference or it was one evening like this, where, no, it was, I think it was two conferences back. We talked about how everything that hits our senses come in as a vibration. And the senses, if you hypersensitive, and most of our senses work with hair. Our skin works with hair. Our vestibular system works with hair. Our sense of smell works with hair. The sense of taste does not work with hair, but it has little ampule thingies that act in a very similar way. But our hearing works with hair. Our sight does not work with hair, except it is fascinating that it depends on how the body reads the environment. They say even the eyelashes move. So again, there's a bit of sensory input received through the hair of your eyes. So and the more stressed we are, the more insecure or unsure of ourselves, the more we tell ourselves we're not good enough. This is a hostile environment. Nothing will ever work out for me. The body responds to that. The hair stands up. It becomes more sensitive to the environment. And what happens? Now it loops. Now it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're oversensitive, you withdraw, desperate for contact, can't have contact, irrespective of profile, because now you're in a complete survival state. So what is the ideal world? The ideal world is the one where we have a mind dynamics profile, which shows where's the places in the brain and body that we use the most because we are the most comfortable there using that because we've used it for so long. So it's been used for a long time. Then we become comfortable. And because we're comfortable, what do? We use it for a long time. So again, it loops. So in an ideal world, and that's why I love mind moves. In the ideal world, we have a profile that is whole brained. We do have a back brain. We do have a front brain. One of those two is dominant. We do have a bottom brain. We do have a top brain. One of those two would be dominant. We do have a left brain. We do have a right brain. One of them would be dominant. But then in between all of this, we've got a gear lever. So when we get stuck in a profile, it's a car without gears. So without gears, are you going to go anywhere? Yeah. But it's that ability to change gears. Okay, okay, okay. I need a lot of strength, or I need a lot of input now. Okay, go back, go back, go back. No, 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 no. You have to go fast. Okay, that's definitely not first gear. Okay, can you imagine how the engine would rev? So, so in the ideal world, a profile is a map for the parts of your brain and your body, your sensory input and your motor output that you use the most often. It's your default
Mm.
without thinking. It's unconsciously. How did you say it? It's unconscious processing. You just go to that place. My children were saying the other day I was parking, but I always reverse park if I can. Um, and they said, ja, sy is weer reg om te gaan. Um, there must always be a getaway. There must always be a quick getaway. And it's really, really true because I get overwhelmed so easily. My profile is extremely sensitive, uncomfortably so. Too much red, way too much red. So the sensory filters are way too wide open. So there's too much information coming in. So at some stage for self-preservation, I have to run away or have to just go to the loo and sit there for a long time or wash the dishes, even though when you're with people that you really love, but you just need to go away for a bit because it's just too much information. And that's why I can't understand when somebody says, come on. What you saying you stressed? No, man, come. Let's go and hike and let's have a chat. Daar's niks vir my erger as dit nie. Let's go walk and we chat. No, 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 please not. No, mm-mm. Okay, but then you need to understand that person is probably not backbone dominant. They probably front brain dominant. And they need to talk to process. Do you know those people?
Mm.
Please don't interrupt them. They pretend to have a conversation, but they're not. They don't want you to contribute. They want to talk. They want you to listen. You must be there, but you must be quiet. Yeah? And if you are a person is front brain dominant plus free flow to the hand and the foot, well, to the hand specifically, it's worse. It's worse for whom? For the other person, not for them. And that's what fascinates me about relationships. How we tend to gravitate spontaneously to a life partner that balances our profile. Rudine, do you also find that?
Definitely. Yeah. So one time, long ago, when we tested adults, there was a young man and he was his fiance, and he asked, "But can this work?" I say, "Yes, it can work," because they were so different from each other. But with the knowing that you need to respect the other people, the other person, really respect them and love them for the way that they differ from you. Definitely.
Absolutely. What is fascinating is if a person has a blue profile, very blue, because a front top left and a blue hand, all right? And the other person, whatever the rest of the profile is, back brain and red ear. Now, that combination is a difficult combination because the one that needs to talk, but there's in that blue profile with the front part, left blue, top blue, front blue, blue hand. So they say, oh, I'm immediately thinking of a conversation that I heard the other day. And the woman was just saying, but in front of her husband, my mother-in-law is just revolting. And I thought, oh, it can feel like that. But you're talking about somebody else's mother. Um, but the more blue in the profile, especially if it's a very expressive profile, they don't necessarily select their words with care because they say it as it is. One of the guys on the farm, he ah he messed up big time, and I said to him, "Theo, you have to put a wag voor jou mond." He said, "Maar as 'n aap is 'n aap." Ek sê, "Is it a real aap or is it a person?" He said, "No, it's a person." I said, "But then it's a person, it's not an aap. Why do you call them an aap?" Because they don't know what they're saying. I said, "But then you can say, maybe you need more information before you talk, but you can't call them an aap." But with a very blue profile, an aap's an aap, hoor. You understand? And that is, if that falls on a red ear, I mean, ah, that is hardship in a relationship. And you know what they say, if there's a problem with communication, there's an immediate knock-on effect on trust. Because trust and communication go together. So where does mind moves fit into all this? Well, it's the gear lever. It gives us the gears. The quick forward of left, our first gear, the more cruising, the reverse when it's necessary. So mind moves helps us to balance our profiles in times of stress because we do get stuck in a rut. But it's a rut in here. It's a place. It's an overlap place. Initially, when I started working with the profiles, I thought it went to the back brain, then it goes to the bottom brain, and then it goes to the left or the right brain. Only to realize, yeah, it goes through the bottom brain, but then it goes to an overlap place of back left, right front, or any of those combinations. And then the hand and the foot, where does that come in? Well, it's expressive. And the hand doesn't really represent communication, even though there's such a strong link between the right thumb specifically and the language centers in the brain, because the right hand feeds from the left brain, which is typically the language part of the brain. Doesn't mean there's no language in the right brain. The use of language is just different because the right brain wants the understanding is way more important than the correctness of the left brain. So the hand is just a handy way. The hand is a handy way of referring to communication. And the leg, well, stepping forward, how do you do it with your legs? So it's really not rocket science, but it's a nifty model. And I think, but it's like everything. You need to really understand it before you can be seriously passionate about that. And then you want to tell everybody. If you really understand the profiles, there's no ways that you don't want at every dinner party, every braai, and every opportunity at any church or at any school, want to talk about the profiles and how it impacts on learning. That's always important. But more importantly, how it impacts on the relationships. And that's where the relationship profile is a marvelous thing. It's a marvelous thing because it looks at that overlap between the parent and the child. And I really think if one sat down with a profile, but really sit down with it and you take it bit by bit, I don't know if a day is long enough to talk about a profile. Because there's so much information. That's why it's always important that when we talk about a profile, it's within the context of a goal. Why are you here? Now I'm battling with my relationship. Now I'm battling with reading. Because then you interpret the profile in terms of that goal. And in a way, we look at the profile as a scapegoat. We want to see what in the profile can we blame for why the person is battling with this and that and the other. Because what it does when you manage to find something in a profile that you can blame is not the right word, but just in the context of the conversation, what happens, it moves away from the people. I'm not useless. It's this part of my profile that makes me do that. Yeah, that's true. But now you need to do something about the opposite part of the brain to balance out this one that's stumbling you up. Does that make sense? Jenny Lee, this was your need. Are we heading in a direction that's working for you?
Yes, I love this. I love this balancing thingy. But now, Melody, if I can ask a question now, you said when you started with profiles, you thought it moves from the back brain to the heart, emotional brain, and then to the front brain, but it doesn't. It overlaps. But that's how I understand it. So can you maybe just elaborate a little
Okay.
bit on that?
So, where is the back part of the brain? It's actually the back part of the top brain because that's where we interpret information. So that's now here we're going to stumble on the limitations of a model
Okay.
because information comes in through the senses.
Mm.
It doesn't have a name yet. It's not in the cortex yet, but it has to go through the emotion. So there's an emotional response based on sensory input.
Mm.
And that combination then goes to the sensory back part of the brain.
Yeah.
Seeing, occipital, temporal, parietal. You know where the different bits sit. And then the participatory midline, and then the front part of the brain. So there are
Mm.
four parts to the top brain. And three, and I really think we need to understand something about God's plan when he made man and women, because there's more lobes to the back brain than there is to the front brain. So what does that mean? We should actually spend a little bit more time perceiving than acting. You understand? I remember most of you were too young. Maybe Mariki will remember, or Lenta. I think you're too young, Lenta, too. The rest of you are definitely too young. But years and years ago, there was a South African politician, Pik Botha, and he was an exceptionally good speaker. He was he was spellbound. He was unbelievably good. I don't know if he always spoke the truth. He was a politician, probably not, but he spoke extremely well. And he had this long story about something that they're going to change in government. And at the end of it, no, it was probably a 20-minute speech on this particular topic. A guy put his hand up, and I guess that he was front brain dominant with an open hand, and he said, "Can you please tell me why?" And he asked the question for this 20-minute speech was the answer to the question that the guy asked after the 20 minutes. And he said, "I can't help it if you're born with an open mouth and closed ears." And I thought it was extremely rude, but very apt. Because some people are born with open mouths because they're front brain dominant and they probably have free flowing information. So information rushes forward. It doesn't stay in the back brain long enough to figure out, read the environment. Is this necessary? The sugar packet thing. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Before you go over into action.
Mm.
So Jenny Lee, the question. So the information comes in through your senses. It has to go via the spinal cord. It hits
Mm.
the emotional part of the brain, and there's a chemical response. And that chemical response is going to say either engage or disengage. It's how we read the environment. But if it's engage, it has to go to the top back part of the brain. If you front brain dominant, it still has to go to the back part of the brain. It has to, but
Yeah.
pinball, it's
Yes.
do do.
Yeah.
So if you back brain dominant, it goes do, and it stays there for a while. And the ping ball goes tick, 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 but all in the back part of the brain. And then, if you're very lucky, it crosses the participatory midline and it goes forward. So, Jeannie Lee, the thing is, before it gets to the top part of the brain, it has to go to the top part because that's where we say salty, cold, good, pit,
Yeah.
whatever, that sits in the thinking part of the brain.
Mm.
And the back and the front part of the brain is in the top brain. So
Yeah.
in the house part, sensory input comes in, but it's unprocessed. It's raw trillings. It's raw vibration. But those vibrations has a pattern, and that pattern elicits memory. And it and now there's an emotional response, but there's no meaning yet. And then it goes one up if you're lucky, and then comes the meaning, and it goes to the back part of the brain. Whether it stays in the back part of the brain is determined whether you're back or front brain dominant.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
to go to the back brain, but sometimes it's just fleetingly. So if a person is bottom brain dominant, that's why I like to think of the triune brain in terms of foundation, walls, and roof. I think in terms of a lift. It's just because the doors can open and close. So when you bottom brain dominant, the lift goes to the emotional part of the brain and the doors open. But it doesn't just open and close immediately. It goes open, you go and play on that floor. You stay there, you spend time there if you're bottom brain dominant. If you're top brain dominant, the doors, you still go there, the doors still open, but it's one of those tweet, tweet, and then you go to the top part of the brain and there's less of an emotional response. Does that make sense? And then when it gets to the top brain, there is no ways, nothing in life is either left or right. It's always, it has to be both. So again, there's a pinball thing going on up there, but it invariably, when it gets to the top part of the brain, it chooses the left. So there's the left, and there's a T junction. So you have to go left or right. There's no other option. And then once you've gone left or right, there's a back and a front. Do you understand what I mean by that? Because the
Yeah,
left
now
brain has a back and a front.
yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
when you get to the top story, you're going to turn left or right.
Mm.
And then again, there's a T junction. And is it going to be to the back left or is it going to be to the front left? Is it going to be back right or front right? And when in time, in your mind, you get to the top story, you don't think about turning left or right. You don't think of going to front or back, unconsciously competent. You just go there.
Yeah.
So what does mind moves do or say? It says there's more places to play up there. This is not the only place up there. Let's go and explore. And as you explore if you are maybe right back brain dominant, and you go and explore left front, it is a completely different part of your being. You get different skills. You start seeing things. Oh, this is why that person does that or the other, because it actually comes from this room. You understand? I find if you really understand the profiles, it always makes me humble. It humbles me because I realize how incredibly we differ as human beings and what a miracle it is when we get along. It's a miracle. It's a miracle when we understand something in a similar way. It's a miracle. Because given our past experiences, given our preferred sensory modality, given our different MDP profiles, to be able to experience anything in a similar way miracle. And where does the conflict rise? Because isn't my world the world? No, no, it's just my world. And it's building those bridges to other people. You know, when my children were little, well, not that little, but so they were probably what, 8, 9, 11, round about that age. Goodness gracious, they gave me a hard time. Because if I wanted to put a light on our gate post, they'll say, can't you please just put two? And can they please be the same? I said, no, I don't want two. I want one. And they, I want one. No, it must be two. But not only must it be two, they must be the same. And it was only because I understood the profiles that I understood their need for symmetry. I don't like symmetry. Heerlikheid as daar 'n pot staan met twee kersblakers langs dit, that I feel inclined to add something to just break the symmetry. Okay? But that's me. And for somebody else, daai lappie moet reguit hou. Verstaan? I don't know if this is helpful. Lente,
I just want to make sure, Melody, because the census,
where are
can
you?
you hear me?
Oh, there you are. I'm looking for you up there. Yeah.
Okay, the census plug into the backpack. So mustn't it automatically, okay, once it has gone through it has gone through the emotional brain and there is an emotional response, it goes to the top, mustn't it go to the back?
Of course
And
it
then
must.
it must first go to the back, left or right, and then
Off the
it
top.
will go to the front.
Well, it should. But if you're front brain dominant, it goes to the back brain, but briefly, it rushes to
Yeah,
the front brain for application, for applying what you've perceived. You have to, it's close to an obsessive movement of an excessive yeah, busyness. You have to act. Those are the people who've
yeah.
really, really, really battled to have a holiday and to just sit. They find it extremely difficult because, in a way, their identity is tied up with doing.
Yes.
So, some people, if they're back brain dominant, they can't do that doing thing. They have to go passive and quiet and withdraw. But it's so unsocial and it's so
Yeah.
unfriendly. What's wrong with you again?
Yeah.
And it's not there's anything wrong with you, it's just processing time. But it's that understanding that why do I have this need to withdraw? Why does one have that? Why do I have this incredible need to socialize, but actually not to socialize, to talk, to talk? Why do I always need to be right? It's because you're left brain. Why do you always, why this internal impulse or drive to constantly question the status quo? Why must things always be done in the same way? That's a typical right brain thing. So, no, change. We need change. The left brain says, for what? This is working. Yeah, but it's boring, man. Come on. You understand? Yeah, it may be boring, but it's actually stability. And that's why the balance thing is so incredibly important. Too much back, you isolate yourself. Too much front, you may be overpowering or intimidating. Goldilocks principle, not too much, just right. Same with up and down. Too much down here. Here always goes hand in hand. Think of the eye movements, think of the AT&R, the left brain, right brain integration steps. Can you remember? I think you hardly ever use that. But look at the AT&R. It's after the core workout. There's I think it's called the left and right brain workout, where you turn your eyes in a specific direction and then you do the homolateral move and you turn your eyes in the other direction and you do the bilateral movement. That is actually marvelous. But and if you look at the eye movements in your manual, you see when you look down, you activate two things, talking to yourself and feeling. They both sit at the bottom here. So when you look down, what are you activating? Talking. And when you withdraw, what are you going to do? That head's going to drop because you go inside. You can be outside if you've got free flow of information in, but if you've got limited flow or mixed flow, the chances are excellent that you would rather turn inward than observant. So back, but free flowing senses, free flowing input makes you externally observant. Back brain with limited or mixed tends to make, remember, this is not a hard and fast rule. It's tendencies, it's patterns of observation. But it tends to make one more self-reflective, self-focused. Mark 2 was my 8. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Charlize?
Melody?
Okay, kom ons raai. Agterbrein of voorbrein? Charlize? Charlize, dis baie inligting en dit is ook met baie bly is ons het opgeneem sodat jy hom weer kan kyk en
Ek
skryf
gaan.
want jy gaan sien there are many layers of information. It's extremely simple. If you really know the profile, you'll immediately hear what I'm talking about. Where are we now in the profile? Because I'm not using a PowerPoint tonight, because I really wanted to see you for a change, you have to go visual. So if you draw while you are listening, it's going to make life a bit easier.
Ja, dit is wat ek doen en dat is wat I'm busy with.
Okay, good for you. Good student. Zarina?
Always nice listening to comforting information in such a variety of flavors, can I say? Because I was making notes and it's all stuff that we know, but when we hear it in a different way, it gets you thinking. And I was just thinking, I'm creative, right brain, sensory at the back, and when I definitely agree with you that sometimes I have to withdraw because life becomes too overwhelming and I just don't, my ears just doesn't want to hear anymore. So I definitely sit back and sometimes you get stuck there.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I found out when I'm getting really stuck there is that I would get holes in my socks, but in my heels and not in my toes.
Good explanation. Good explanation. Jenny Lee?
That this is I love it. It's exactly like Zarina says, we know this stuff, but I'm blue everywhere with a red leg. So ek hak net so nou en dan bietjie uit as ek gemaklik voel, né? So for me, I'm not gemaklik with this stuff. So I want so I think the more that I can talk about it and the more that I can dabble with it, the more I can myelinate my pathways, become more comfortable and be able to interpret better. My thing is the interpretation.
Okay, now, Jenny Lee, I am convinced that you need at least one red input to process profiles easily. Because the red input, either eye or ear, gives you the bigger picture. Because the profile isn't a list of
I
qualities.
know, yes.
It is a list of qualities, but it's not a list of qualities.
Yes, ek verstaan. Ek
So it
verstaan.
has to go within a bigger context. Because if
Mm,
it just stays bitty information, typical blue information, it is
mm.
extremely difficult to see the bigger picture.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
thing is, Jenny Lee, it's just do it. You won't do
yeah,
a perfect profile the first time. I still maintain for the first couple of years, I should actually refund all those people because my first profiles were, if I think back now, they were dreadful. They weren't dreadful. They were accurate because they agreed and they found value in it. But if I found some of the old reports when I moved, I think people paid me for this and they were happy. I was embarrassed. But it's really it's levels of understanding. It's levels of our understanding. But if you don't, where did you move? If you don't if you don't do it, you won't get to the
yeah,
levels of understanding.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's in a way giving yourself permission. I know this is not going, I'm not going to say everything I need to say. Thank God you're not, because otherwise we overwhelm people. It's one of our
yeah,
things at the Mindfulness Institute, is we so love what we do. And we've got so much knowledge that we overpower people with the amount of information. It's so important to focus on the reason that they're there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so you use the same profiles in many sessions with different, where there's different goals, because every time you focus on something else.
yeah, yeah,
So just do it, man,
yeah.
Mariki.
Dankie.
Mariki, kom in. Ah, I think
Ek
maybe.
is
Oh, daar's hy.
the profiles is amazing when you work with the children for them to understand, and it really empowers them.
It really does. It really, really does. And then not even five mind moves, but to pick the mind move or two or three, but not to do all of them all the time. But that when
Mm,
um, somebody, there's actually a few teachers who teach mind moves as life skills, and they nailed it. Mind moves are actually life skills because it enable us to flow with life, to change gears.
mm,
The profile shows us the map of where the place where we tend to go to, where there's skill and when we're in survival. But and then the mind moves gels with that to give us that sense of balance.
mm.
Lekker, lekker. Hey, Rudy.
Ekskuus, ek het net
Ietsie wat
gehoor
jy
jy
wou
het
sê.
my naam gesê.
Hey.
O, nee. Ek wou sommer sê die Goldilocks ding is baie oulik. Yeah, love that. And yeah, it's always for me with children to explain impulse control. I use that the 4 breaks. So your left brain is a brake. Yeah, it helps you to stop. The back brain is to stop. The back brain is to stop, and the right foot is stop. So that's the things that helps you to have good impulse control. Yeah, so a parent really understands that. I just wanted to add that to the breaks that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have used. And the other thing, yes, I always explain about the pause on the in the
Bottom brain.
Focus verloor.
yeah, in the onderbrein,
Bottom.
the pause that needs to info needs to run through that part. But I didn't realize it first needs to go. There's also a quick pause in the back brain before it goes to the front brain. So thank you for that. I really, appreciate that insight.
Lekker. We must do this more often, hey? Thank you. Time's up. Your families are going to need you. Any questions? Just a quick something. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Life is really not very easy at the moment, eh? There's a strange something going on in the world. I don't know what it is, but I can't remember ever being so aware of suffering, but in all directions. But there's something beautiful that happened yesterday. The DBE called us for a meeting. It was online, and Chantal attended, and they are starting a platform of sorts where all the SAIS accredited service providers, the Mindfulness Institute was the first SAIS accredited service provider. So yeah, they really, 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 we've got one of the most comprehensive load of courses with SAIS accredited with SAIS as well. So the DBE is creating a database where the institute can be listed. Well, they want us to list it, and you can all be listed. And then you can list your courses. And then there's a fascinating other thing. Teachers are listed there as well. And if the teacher indicates that they have a development need or a need to learn more about understanding children. Depends on how we program this. We don't do the programming, we just give the key words. Then a mindfulness course will pop up. They say you need to look at this. So it is a completely new venue. It's new access to a whole new group of people because we work extremely hard on Facebook, but we talk to the same people over and over and over. Maybe we get 100 new people in a year. This Naptosa thing is helping us to gain access to a few more people, but it's very difficult to find new people or a new way to reach people because the people that we talk to, we have probably trained already. So we keep on talking to the same people. We have to find different people. And it sounds like this is really an opportunity that will open a lot of doors. So will the Naptosa thing. I honestly, I can't tell you how it's going to work because I don't know. It drives me insane because they'll probably wait 10 days before the next training, and then we need to train you and we need to send you to a specific place. So it's very uncomfortable. I'll train if I have to, um, because I think it's 650 teachers that need to be trained. They're going to run into difficulty at some stage. You understand? So, in a way, I wish I didn't tell you about it because what must you do with half info? Exactly the same that Chantal and I do with half info. Now we wait again. Um, but it would be lekker because your fuel is paid, your accommodation is paid, and you get a training fee, a nice training fee. And it would work towards the credits. We'll talk about the credits another day. So don't let that be a source of fear. You know how we do things at the Institute. We're constantly involving because we want to keep our people. So don't let that create fear for you. Okay? Really appreciate you. Thank you for the marvelous work that you do. Go and find an opportunity to tell people about the profiles. And you don't have to use your profile, Magnetic Man, while you're talking. Because just give enough examples, people want to be able to relate. So keep it simple. Keep it simple. I will never forget when I wrote the first book, the editor said, write it for a grade 9 learner. And I said, what? But it's for adults. She said, the general understanding level of an adult is grade 9. So that's really simple. I would actually lower it, not because we think they're stupid, but just because it makes it easier for people to understand. And with understanding comes caring, and with caring comes love. So we have to hit that understanding. So if you are driven by getting parents to understand themselves, but specifically their children, the talk will come. The talk just comes. You'll see. It just comes because you'll make sense and you can give them loads of. And you don't talk about the whole profile. And you don't even call all the names the names. You just say some get stuck in the back part of the brain, and typically this is what they look like. Some get stuck in the top brain, and that's 5 minutes per part, because otherwise we overwhelm again. I really appreciate you. Thank you for your time tonight.